Hi everyone. So this is actually my first YouTube video, but I really wanted to make this um, and give some advice on how I transferred from Boston College to Barnard College of Columbia University. So I basically had to go through this transfer process alone, and there was a lot of things that I didn't know at the time, and I thought that I could make this video to potentially help future applicants. So, the first piece of advice that I wanted to give you is for me and for a lot of people, I think rejection is not necessarily redirection because in my case, I was waitlisted at Barnard, which was my dream school for the longest time in my freshman year. And I knew that before attending Boston College or BC that I was not happy with like where I ended up, although it is a great school and I'm not saying that you shouldn't go because I didn't like it, but it was just not ideal for what I was looking for. With my first year application, I think I made a lot of mistakes, and I wanted to just give some insight on like how you could learn from the mistakes that I made because this time around, I think I really focused on those weak areas and continue to maintain the strong points of my application. So for reference, I was accepted to NYU, Barnard College of Columbia University, and I previously ED'd to Cornell in my first year, and I reapplied, but I was rejected again. Um, and there are like reasons for that I'll go into later, but first, I guess I'll start with the stats because I feel like a lot of people will ask about that. So, like I said, I was um, previously waitlisted at Barnard and I went to BC for my freshman year. I'm also international because I went to high school in Canada, so my application is still considered international. So, if you're also an international student, like maybe this would be helpful for you because there's not that much information about like transferring as an international student, and we are like comparatively a lot more disadvantaged than US applicants. And since Barnard's acceptance rate is already like 6%, you could really think about like how hard that is for an international applicant because they only give a certain amount of seats for that in the freshman year, and then for transferring it's probably even less. I also wanted to preface that I did not ask for aid in my application because Barnard is need aware. So if you have the financial ability to be a full pay student, I suggest that you don't apply for like financial aid because they will see that in your application. And in this year's waves, because they release in like first wave, second wave, third wave, almost all of the first wave applicants that got in were full pay. So it definitely is a disadvantage, I would say, to apply for aid, but of course, everyone's situation is different and you can definitely still get in if you're asking for aid too. Um, so, with my stats, um, in high school, I had a 93 out of 100 unweighted GPA. I went to school in Canada, so my grading system is not like a 4.0 scale, and we did not do class rank or weighted GPA. I think that converts to like approximately a 4.0 on the US scale, but GPA is not everything because for me in my senior year, I really struggled with like keeping on top of things after being accepted to college, and I actually did really bad in one class. I think I got like a D or like a low C, and I really thought that that would break my application because that did drag down my high school GPA from like a 96 to a 93. But definitely, like, if it's just one grade or like two grades, even, that's not going to break your application because with Barnard, especially, they really look at your essays and your extracurriculars and if you are a really good fit for their school because it is really unique since it's an LAC and also connected, or like it's also like an undergrad school of Columbia. So also I wanted to preface that if you want to go to Columbia, definitely like don't just apply to Barnard as a backdoor, because it's like 3% easier, because they really want to see that like you want to go to Barnard for Barnard and not for Barnard to get the Columbia name, although that is really important as well for like jobs, and you know, prestige is always like a factor in my case, and I think like a lot of people consider that too. And like if you're transferring from a school that you're not exactly happy with the result in, like you're still somewhat trying to gain prestige, but don't write that like in your essay. Definitely like that should not be like the focal point. And if it's the only reason that you're applying, then you should reconsider if like transferring is for you, because that definitely like they will see through that in your essays. And my college GPA was a 3.85 around out of 4.0, and I applied as a sophomore transfer, meaning I only did one semester at BC when I applied for transfer. For my reasoning for transfer, basically I applied as an environmental studies major, and specifically like environmental and sustainability major at Barnard. Although I was in the business school at BC, I think another really important thing is like you should think about your reasoning for transfer, because I knew that I wanted to pursue something in business, like I wanted to do econ or finance for my like future career, but I also really enjoyed the environmental curriculum at Boston College, and specifically BC did not have the major that I applied for at Barnard, which was like environment and sustainability, and that was a really great way for me to justify my reasoning for transfer, as well as a lot of the extracurriculars that I did at BC were heavily environmentally focused. So I feel like that really played into like why I got accepted. Also, I did not take the SAT, so I was test optional. In my case, I think like in the future, schools are trying to reintroduce the SAT testing or SAT ACT testing policy. So if you're applying like a few years after me, definitely check if Barnard or Columbia or whatever school you're trying to go to has like reinforced that policy, because I think from now on it's definitely going to disadvantage you not to take the SAT or not to take the ACT, because schools are trying to like reinforce that policy, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And then for extracurriculars, my biggest one was that I was in a biogeochemistry lab at BC, and I did research for a professor there, and it was around climate change. And the research that I was a part of was being accepted to like a research journal, and this research journal was like tier 1. It was a really prestigious research journal, and because of the amount of work that I put in, they decided that like I could be a potential co-author for publication. And then another thing that I did was I did an independent research project with another professor in my one of my other environmental classes, and I did this research project on climate change communication in cranberry farms around Massachusetts. And I really talked about that in my Barnard essays. And then I was also a e-board member for this, for the like integrated science school at BC, and we basically funded research opportunities. We made this undergraduate research fellow program for students that wanted to do like independent research, and we also got funding from the department, and we received $22,000 to $22,000 as a research grant that could be divided among 5 students. And then we also advocated for around $8,000 in research conference grants. And we made a database where students can connect with professors who are seeking research assistance, and these students are simultaneously seeking research opportunities, because my application was really tailored towards environmental research, so that was a great thing to add. And these were all really focused, and I would say whatever major you're applying to transfer into, you really need to focus your extracurriculars on that, because for first year applications you're still figuring stuff out and you're still figuring life out. But with transfer, it's kind of in between grad school and undergraduate application, so they want to see that you have a more firm direction and what you want to study, and how the school that you're applying to can help you study that. I was also a part of a nonprofit for environmental activism, and the nonprofit was featured in Forbes and Fox News. And then we created a carbon credit app that passed beta testing. And then one of the other important things for Barnard specifically was that I wrote for a women's empowerment nonprofit, and basically we would publish articles on feminist movements, and we would do this on this platform called WeChat, which serves Chinese netizens. And we had a lot of followers, and we published more than 40 articles. And we talked about things we wrote about things like transgender athlete rights, and the Barbie movie, and how that impacted feminism, and how that was the whole created a whole feminist movement in its own. And I really wanted to address the cultural gaps and barriers in feminism and discourse in general. And then the only extracurricular that I had from high school was that I did fencing for 9 years on the Canadian national team. I was in the high performance program in that team, and then I won first place at Canadian nationals and top 8 in North American championships in my age category. But that is a really old extracurricular, so I wouldn't recommend that you talk a lot about your high school involvement, because the more college involvements that you have, the stronger your application would be. And then that was basically all of my main stats. And then I also had some awards for climate competitions and some grants from my school for research and some smaller stuff like that. But I think the main thing was my extracurricular involvement. So I wanted to talk more about the transfer process. So I knew that I wanted to transfer before coming into BC, and then I basically had an orientation week there, and I started classes for around 2 weeks. And I was still hoping that maybe I would adjust to the environment and I would start to love it. But unfortunately, that kind of just solidified my goals in trying to transfer to my dream school. So I started, I would say I started researching the process in late September, and then I started building my extracurriculars from September all the way to when I submitted my application. And one of the really important things that I wanted to highlight was to make good connections with your professors, because if you don't know, you need a lot of schools ask for at least one recommendation letter for when you submit the application, but I had 3 in total. And then for Barnard and Columbia, I also had a professor at Columbia that wrote my recommendation letter, because I did a summer program there, and I basically reached out and then asked him to send the recommendation letter to admissions again. And it's really, really important that you ask early and that you have an outside of the classroom connection with them, because a good recommendation letter is not only going to be saying like so and so is a great student and like does all of her assignments on time and participates in class. Like anybody can write that about you, but to have a good recommendation letter, they need to know what you're doing outside of the classroom. And that's why I tried to do research with as many professors as I could, so that they could really see like my motivation and my passion for the subject. So another thing that I wanted to mention was like how to be involved in your school, because as a freshman, like it's really hard to get into like competitive clubs or like be like in a leadership position, um, and like to find research. But for me, like one of the main reasons why I did not like BC was because it was a predominantly white institution, and even more so than like other schools because it's also Catholic, and I'm not Catholic like at all. I actually like wrote my application essay on Buddhism, so I tried to like look for professors that were like POC, and I actually reached out to the professor that I did my biogeochemistry research with, and I just like went in and talked to him, and I was like, I really wanted to do like anything in your lab, like any opportunity that I could have would be great. And I talked to him like about my plans to transfer, and he offered me like a position on the spot because they were actually like looking for an undergraduate research assistant like a few days before I asked. So like don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Like you really have to pitch yourself in a way that shows that you're motivated and you would do anything to like work with them, because in college nobody's advocating for you, especially like if you're a freshman. I honestly did not have like a great connection with the people at BC, but I knew that I wanted to get out. So there are like sacrifices that you need to make, and don't think that it's embarrassing, because at the end of the day, if you don't do it, you're not going to get in and you're going to be more embarrassed. So just be brave, and like people love to see that you're highly motivated and that you can vouch for yourself, because you really need to do that throughout the transfer application, because you don't have your high school counselors, you don't have your friends who are applying at the same time. The only motivation that you have is yourself. And I mean, if you don't like your institution, then like obviously like to get out of that as soon as you can. So don't be afraid to reach out and apply to like as many things as you can, because I was rejected like 3 or 4 times from different clubs and different leadership roles that I applied to. And then finally I got the e-board like acceptance, because that board was relatively new and I knew that they were looking for people. So also be strategic about what you apply to, because like if it's like really competitive and they don't take many freshmen already, then like you don't have to put that much effort into that. Like obviously still try, but look for things that like that are within your reach, because it doesn't really matter like how prestigious like the club or organization is, because these admissions officers don't know that much about your school. They just want to see that you're involved and you're going to continue being involved on their campus. I also wanted to mention that course selection is really important too, and I feel like people don't really talk about this. But if the major that you're in, or the school that the college, like the undergraduate college that you're in, is not the same major or same field that you want to transfer to, you have to pick courses that show that you are interested in the field that you want to apply to. So for example, I was in the business school, but I knew that for my transfer, I wanted to transfer to like the environmental field. So all of the classes, or like I would say like 80% of the classes that I picked were around like environmental, like sustainability. Like I took some sociology courses, and I tried to pick the highest level courses that I would be able to enroll in. So I took multiple level 300, level 200 courses, and a lot of these were like seminar based, so like you could really form a connection with the professor even outside of the classroom. One last thing I wanted to add for the essays portion is that you really shouldn't be reusing your like supplementals or your Common App essay from the first year application, especially if you've already written on that topic in the first year. You don't want to repeat yourself. In my case, like, because I applied to like 5 schools in total, there were some essays that in the first year, like for example, I used that essay to apply to Cornell, but then like for transfer, I used that Cornell essay to apply to a different school. Just make sure that your essays are not like you're not using the same essay to apply to the same school twice, is what I'm trying to say. I also wanted to make like a short section on like your mental well-being while applying, because I think that's really important, especially like if you're not happy at the place that you're at right now. Because speaking from experience, I really did not like the environment at BC, and there were amazing people that helped me, but I just felt like I did not fit in there. And as I like tried like as I was deeper and deeper in the transfer process, I felt like I was isolating myself from the community a lot, and I always had the feeling that like I was one foot out of the door and I was going to leave after this year. And so I didn't really make any like super close friends, or like I didn't really have like that great of a connection to like the social life at BC. Um no, I definitely think it's important to balance that, but another way of thinking about it for me was like I was working really hard on these applications every day. I was also like trying to maintain good grades. And so I just felt like I wanted to put my all into my second chance, because like this was probably the last chance that I would ever have. And I really sacrificed like my social life and like other aspects like my sleep, which are not healthy, and I don't recommend that. But it's okay if you feel like that, because just know that like I felt the same way. um and it was really isolating at times, because like I didn't know anyone in Boston, and um like the overall culture just made me feel kind of not confident, and I knew that this is not where I wanted to be. So what I recommend that you do is like every time that you finish something for your transfer, like it could be something really small, like asking for a recommendation, or like submitting an application, or writing an essay, just like do something nice for yourself, like get yourself some good food, or like take yourself out and like go on a walk, or like just do something fun to like relax, because you really need to reward yourself in this process. Like it was probably the most stressful thing that I've done, because there was so much pressure weighing on this decision, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could do what I wanted to do last year, and like this was my dream for so long. um and at the same time, you're balancing like a full college course load, or maybe you're even overloading. um and there's so many things that you don't know about transfer, because it's very ambiguous, and that's the reason why I wanted to make this video as well. One of the resources that I used was this subreddit called Transfer to Top 25. And a lot of people say that it's like toxic and it's not healthy, um, but just take people's advice with like a grain of salt. Like don't listen to everything that you see on there, and like don't let them discourage you like to apply, because you're not like you didn't reach this cutoff or you didn't reach that cutoff, because nobody knows unless you're the admissions counselor. But it was really nice to have that platform, because I felt like I had other people that were like in the same process as me, and like I actually like made some like transfer friends from that subreddit that like I would, be in touch with and like ask when applications are coming out. Which is another thing, is that most schools release in waves. So for Barnard and for NYU, I got in both in the first wave, which I'm so grateful for. And I'm so grateful that I didn't have to wait. Some people are still like waiting for decisions. So that can like be something to like, I guess, like find a sense of community and find people that are like experiencing the same thing as you. So could take advantage of that. And there are a lot of like ambiguous things, like where should I upload this material, or like should I email this like admissions office, and all of those answers can often be found on that subreddit. Like all you have to do is like search up your school and like just scroll through and see if somebody had the same question as you. And also reach out to like people that have transferred from your current school and like ask them for advice, because I connected with somebody who transferred to Cornell, and although I didn't get into Cornell, it was so great to see that like somebody was doing the same thing as me like 2 or 3 years ago, and that advice can be really helpful and it can be really reassuring to like get that advice, because again, like nobody is gonna have specific information about like how does your GPA like compare to other schools' GPA, how does your school's like rigor compare to other schools' rigor, unless you have someone that already transferred from that specific school. Like for BC, like it's not that easy to get like a 4.0, and like some other schools it can be really easy to get a 4.0. Like community college is significantly easier to get a better like GPA. And all of those things are like taken into account, so just talk to people if you can. Just reach out to like as many people as you want to, or like as you can find, and just try to talk to them. But that's all the advice that I have for today, and if you guys have like any questions, you can like put it in the comments and I'll try to answer every single one. But good luck, and if you guys want any like other detailed videos, I could definitely do that. So thank you for watching.